every person who you help as a nonprofit, or most people you help as a nonprofit, is actually a net loss on your revenue because they don't have the money to pay you for that service. If they did, you'd be running a for-profit. So you have to serve people and fundraise, and serve people and fundraise. So in a nonprofit, things take twice as long. Now, a lot of nonprofits take 5 times as long, but they only have to take twice as long because you have to have both pieces worked out.
Thank you for joining us, Dan. You're coming from North Carolina, is that correct?
That's right, from the beautiful, not too small, not too big city of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh. Well, what's amazing about North Carolina is I'm more familiar. I'm from Kentucky, so of course I'm more familiar with the western side, which is very, very mountainous. But I have friends that spend a lot of time on the North Carolina coast, which I've never seen. But I mean, other than the photos, which it looks amazing. And you're smack in the middle. You can get access to either one. What do you prefer? Are you more into the mountains, or you get out to the ocean?
I'm more of a mountains person. I like to, have a chance of falling to my death at least once a week. So if mountains offer me that.
That's a great life goal. That's a great life goal. What's one of the major misconceptions you run into people before they even start their nonprofit that you wish they knew before they began?
Yeah, I think that that's a fantastic question because I want to give your audience a visual analogy for this. The charity mindset starts with churches and with the development of charities as this way that we take care of the people we don't want to think about. So you got your street urchins and your orphans, and you got your women and children. And it's just like, wow, they're having such a tough time. Let's give some of our money to help them, right? And the vast majority of nonprofits in this country operate like charities. The most famous one is probably the Salvation Army. And when you're at Walmart and you're seeing the guy with the red bell, the Salvation Army, and you hand that person your change, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, wow, look at all this impact that it will make? Or are you thinking, man, I'm so glad he took my extra change and hopefully it will do some good? And that right there is where most nonprofit leaders who are starting out go wrong. See, I don't believe that you should do something that your entity that you have isn't designed to do. So if you're a government, you should not go out and sell things because you suck at it. If you're a business, you shouldn't go out and do charity all the time because that's not how you operate. The unique space in our society that nonprofits can make a difference is with people who can neither afford the solution to their problem, nor will telling them to do it better work. That group of people comprises 80 to 90% of the toughest social issues that we face in America today. The homelessness, the lack of affordable healthcare, the lack of ability to treat each other worth a crap. That is the domain that nonprofits can make an impact at. And when you're a nonprofit leader and you start your nonprofit with this charity mindset, oh, we're just going to have everybody's extras and everybody's garbage. We're going to take garbage and turn it into beautiful things. Then you get everyone's garbage. You get the extra money that people have, which isn't much. You get the extra space that people have, which isn't much. You get the extra time that people have, that isn't much. But if you take a moment and you look at the actual impact that you could make as an organization, and you define that impact, now you're something worth investing in. Now you're something worth giving $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 to, instead of, oh, I have an extra $100. I'll give it to you. And the mindset of my nonprofit is worth it, and my nonprofit will make this impact is the mindset that so many nonprofit leaders don't get until they get hit in the face and they realize they need donations. And that is a way too late point to start with.
It sounds like to me, Dan, people should come to you very early in the process before they fall too far in love with their own idea. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're starting a business, the profit is already defined for you. That's how you measure your value, is did we make money? It's very useful. It teaches you a lot about what you should and shouldn't spend money on. When you're starting a nonprofit, you have to define your impact. You have to define, this is the problem I want to solve, and this is where I want to get. I want to help veterans who struggle with PTSD, and we're going to use intense therapies to get them to live a life where they have confidence, they have peace in the home, and they can take advantage of the opportunities around them. And you have to build in, well, what does that look like? What do those metrics look like? You don't really have to do that as a business. You just know that these people paid me, therefore I'm probably offering value. You have to do that as a nonprofit. You have to define your own impact. And in a lot of cases, if you're seeing a problem and you're seeing a challenge, there are other people seeing a problem and seeing a challenge. With for-profits, it's about finding the niche where most people want something and then filling that niche. With nonprofits, it's finding the group of people who want to solve the problem that you want to solve
Mm,
more so than anything.
community
Um,
building. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely, community building. If you're starting a nonprofit, I have four requirements for anyone who's going to start a nonprofit that lasts. The first requirement is that you have a stable income. You will not make personal money off of this nonprofit. I can probably get you to it in a year. The average is 3. It will be a while before you make any personal money off this nonprofit. You have to have a stable income. Number two is you need to have $5,000 in startup capital that is dedicated to this, at a minimum, dedicated to this organization. 2,500 is going to be paperwork just to start, and you only have 2,500 left. But you need at least 5K in startup capital. You need to be able to dedicate 10 hours a week to this organization at a minimum, and more as it gets going. And you need to have a network of 15 people who like your idea.
On a scale of one not being important and 10 being important, where would you rank the mailing list importance for a charity?
I don't know that I would put it down to just the mailing list. I would just
Mhm,
expand that to the network broadly.
mhm.
It's who you know. You cannot get in the door until you know someone. And if you don't know anyone who has been able to validate your idea, you're going to waste a lot of time pitching. And because there's so many things that when you have an idea, let's go to why do people start nonprofits? In so many cases, people start nonprofits for one of two reasons. I have a little extra time and I want to make a difference, and I want to leave a legacy. Those are really the only two. And the people who have a little extra time and want to make a difference, when they realize what kind of difference they're making, they turn into the second group.
Mm, okay.
So nonprofits are primarily designed to leave a legacy on your community. And there's so many things that go into doing that well, particularly because as a nonprofit, you don't have a product to sell, you don't have a service to sell. You have to create the vision of the future in your prospect's mind. And if you can do that effectively, you will get people to give you money. You will get people to get on board. You will get people to be excited about what you're doing. And if you can't, you will really struggle. So it is a marketing effort, first and foremost, for nonprofits. And if you don't have that network of people who you can go to, your pitch might be off. Your idea might be off. Your audience might be off. There are just so many things that can be screwed up that what I recommend to a nonprofit founder is you are asking those 15 people about your idea and what they think about that idea. And then you are pitching your idea and asking for money from some of them. because nothing will give someone, a drunk man will get clarity when you ask him for money. And all of a sudden, he will become an expert on whatever you're asking him for.
That's very
You
true.
want to get a real answer out of someone? Ask them for money. So you need to have a big enough network that you can ask the ideas and you can ask them for money. And that's how you start to put together something that actually will get funded and you'll actually be able to make an impact with.
Has anybody come to you as far as creating a nonprofit that maybe they're a pro basketball player or it's just somebody with a lot of money all of a sudden, and let's face it, a lot of famous people start charities, some for good reasons, some for tax reasons, but the charities are still out there doing great work. um, do you see that at all, where somebody is financially successful and they're looking for a way to, I guess, offset their taxes? There's no other way to say it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. We call them the three kinds of charity. There's the tax shelter, there's the fly by night, and there's the impact org.
Oh,
And
there we go. Okay.
right, and there's nothing wrong necessarily with creating an organization that is a tax shelter. And I do recommend that if they're not going to take the impact of that organization as seriously, that they set up a foundation which donates to other organizations who are kind of figuring out the groundwork, as opposed to having an organization with someone with a lot of money but not paying a lot of attention to what it's doing, just kind of pumping services out into the field and hoping something happens, right? Because there are so many good causes out there, and I tell founders all the time, that if you don't believe your cause is good enough to ask for money, stop doing it. Quit, shut down your nonprofit, because there are so many other organizations out there who are actually going out and doing an incredible job on whatever cause, and you could donate to them, or other people could donate their money to them. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong. I just think there's this hidden potential in nonprofits that your famous basketball player entrepreneur, they don't necessarily initially see. They see it as a tax shelter, but then you get into like, but what if, nobody's going to remember your bank account when you die. Nobody's going to remember your some people are going to remember your sports achievements, but the longer that goes on, the less they'll remember that. What you'll get a statue of you over is you revitalized an entire low income community, and now there's 14 thriving businesses there, and that's what happened. What will get people to remember you forever is you saved the mountain that was falling apart under acid rain or whatever in their backyard, right? Like, entrepreneurs, we start businesses, we make money, but at the end of the day, we want that money to go towards some sort of impact, whether that's with our kids or whether that's with our community or whatever. And I just encourage someone, if they have a lot of money, they're looking at this nonprofit, and if you're in a position where you can hire someone to do the dirty work and you just reap the impact, great. That's fantastic, and that's a great split. But I just encourage you guys to think that nonprofits have this ability to have you remembered for generations, to create an impact that you are remembered for generations. And that is just something you don't get the opportunity to do all that often.
That's true. Do you offer that full buffet of services where somebody comes in and they've just got money and they might not be the best person to run this nonprofit? Can you assemble a team around them, and that way it's really kind of hands free for them. They can get involved in the events and at whatever level they want, and you build something that you know is going to be that's going to last and have fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. We call it turnkey nonprofit. So you stick in the key. We do an interview with you, right? And we ask you a ton of questions about your passion, where you're coming from. You work with us to define the impact that you want this organization to have. And then we build you what I call the 5 levels of sustainability. And the 5 levels of sustainability are vision, so define your impact. To create an impact team. 3, go get some quick funding so you can test out your first project and see what kind of interest there is, right? You do pilot projects. Um, then you have number four, which is you measure and report your impact because then people actually see it. That's how you get mainstream media attention, by the way. You do a little bit of impact and you talk to the media, and they're all over it. I've gotten media attention for somebody creating a fridge, like putting in a fridge. It was a community fridge, but they're putting in a fridge, and three media outlets covered it because that's how desperate they are for good news right now. So you get you media attention, and then the last piece is we create this funnel, impact marketing. Create this funnel for you where you can get more supporters on a regular basis coming in, getting people from awareness to donating to your organization, basically. You get that cycle rolling as an organization and you will be sustainable. And then you just level it up. You just do it over and over. You cast the vision, you update the team, you raise money, you talk about your impact, you go market and do it again, you do it again, you do it again, and you just grow the organization. Now, obviously, these are not easy, but we put you in a position where by the end of that first 12 months, your organization has raised $50,000 and has media attention and has a team and train your executive director, whoever you end up putting in that position. And now you have an organization that makes impact, and keep an eye on it and engage with it. And it's not just you funding the organization like it is for so many people when they don't work with a professional and they set it up. They're just like the only funder for generations. And they don't have anybody else supporting it. But once you have other people supporting it, it's sustainable.
Sure, and of course you can make a bigger impact too with more pockets involved. Well, it's been my experience that a lot of entrepreneurs will come on the show, and their story arc is basically they encounter a problem trying to do a certain type of business. They break through that obstacle, and then they go, this could be a business. Is that what you did? Did you start a nonprofit and and after you got drugged through the mud and thought, oh my gosh, and then you figured it all out, you thought, I can help other people. Is that what happened?
Kind of, it was very much learning through failure. I blew up the biggest nonprofit that I ran. I ran a $1.5 million a year nonprofit and managed to completely implode it by hiring the wrong person as my treasurer. Actually, that was the I was 22 when I started this organization and hired the very much wrong person. He was a business owner. And so I figured he kind of knew money. I ignored the fact that the businesses he had owned were strip clubs, but like whatever. He's a business owner and had a lot more money than I had. But I learned so many lessons doing that nonprofit, and then I just kind of accidentally ended up as a consultant for other nonprofits. They would just like ask me questions, and I would answer them. And it wasn't until I so I was working in an organization. You talk about defining your impact, right? And why am I so big on defining? I was working in an organization and I was running the continent. So I was North American director for this global nonprofit. And the about $5 million a year organization. And they had a mission statement for all of their eternity because everybody can define what they do. It's the easiest thing in the world. But they hadn't had a vision statement of where they were going until like the past couple of years. And they didn't do a good enough job getting that out to their employees and their volunteers and stuff like that. So there were two different visions of the impact that this organization was supposed to have inside of this company. And I estimate that of the $5 million revenue that they had, it was costing them $1 million a year because some staff had this idea of what the impact was going to be, and some staff had this idea of what the impact was going to be. And when I left that organization, we had a difference in vision. And when I left that organization, um, I just thought about what would be the biggest impact that I could make. And I worked in politics for 10 years, and some of that was in nonprofits too. I worked in politics, and I had really never tried a for-profit. And I looked at the nonprofit sector, and I went, all of the problems that I tried to fix in politics, are fixable through the nonprofit space. If I can understand and figure out what is so effing wrong with this nonprofit space, I can help so many new people make a tremendous impact. And that was what caused me to take the leap and start next level and just start calling my network. And it grew from there.
Fantastic. Well, do you run into the same thing that, and again, I already said I love artists, so I don't want them to feel like they're getting knocked here, but um, particularly when I had the gallery, I worked with a lot of charities and nonprofits at that time because we were using the gallery as a venue for some really great charity events. And it occurred to me later, I thought, oh, I've got all this space and you can't have a gallery show every day. And I'm like, I'm looking for full facility utilization. And I thought, oh,
Yep.
I really like to, this was in San Antonio, Texas, and I really like the San Antonio Food Bank. They've got a compelling story. The president of that is just a great guy. So we got behind them. We did a bunch of different events, but I noticed that there's the business crowd that I would run with, and then there was the artist crowd, and there was the nonprofit crowd, and the nonprofit crowd was more similar to the artist crowd. So there was a different mindset. So I would go to an artist, for example, and say, look, you could be making a whole lot more money, but you got to show up on time and you got to bring all your art and you got to do, in other words, you got to get organized. And some of the nonprofits that I worked with, they didn't have that level of organization that the for-profits did. And I couldn't figure out if it was just the type of people that get attracted towards nonprofits. I don't know if it was a cultural thing or what. It was interesting because of course on the for-profit side, if you're not organized, you'll find out really quickly because you'll be, where'd the website go? Or you show up to the
Right.
location, it's closed, there's butcher paper on the window. Nonprofits sometimes it's not as obvious. So do you run into that where you're doing more coaching with some people interested in nonprofits that you wouldn't have to do if somebody's coming from a business background? I guess that's the most polite. I'm trying to dance around asking it the most polite way possible.
Yeah, well, and this is why I prefer to work with entrepreneurs and business owners who are getting
Mhm.
into the nonprofit space, honestly. Um, because there is, and I think it's just a societal expectation, and then the structure of nonprofits is screwed up following the societal
Mm.
expectation, right? So the societal expectation is these are the places we throw our garbage, these are the places we put our extra stuff, these are the places that they just all do really good and they're really cute, and we do them to feel good. That's the societal. It's like drugs. Nonprofits are like drugs. We do them to feel good. They don't make us feel as good as drugs, so they're not as valuable as drugs. But nonprofits are a lot like drugs, and we don't really, you usually, unless you're an addict, don't buy drugs that when you don't have money for food. You're just like, okay, we'll do the fun stuff later when I have, and that's how people treat nonprofits is
Mhm.
that way. And so yeah, you get a lot of people in the nonprofit space who they just focus on doing good and they don't realize that if you get the business of nonprofits right, you can do so much more good. I'll give you an example. My first ever client paid me $15 an hour to consult with her because I was running a free consulting program for nonprofits. I come from the nonprofit space. So running a free consulting program for nonprofits and it only had 5 spots and she was number 6. And I was like, well, would you pay me enough to flip burgers to do this consulting for you, right? And when we first started working together, she was running a food rescue organization. It was an incredible organization. And she and her husband had started it. They were seeing all this food getting thrown out during COVID, and were like, "There's so many people who could actually use that." And she was working so many hours a day doing this nonprofit work, and it was wrecking her marriage and it was wrecking her relationship with her kids because all she was thinking about was how much good she could do. And she was serving like, I don't know, 20 stores, picking up for 20 stores and serving about like 5 or 6 communities at the time. And one of the first things I told her to do was she had, and this is one of the most painful things that a nonprofit leader ever has to do, but I told her You need to cut all of your bulk stores now. If you do not cut your bulk stores, you will get divorced. She cut her bulk stores. It was tough. You make these promises and you're like, I can pick up your extra food and I can get it out to people. And you make promises beyond your means and you got to cut back. But that was 2017. It's 2025. That organization last year served 3.25 million meals, has 200 stores they pick up from, serves 80 communities.
Wow, that answers the question I was going to ask you for a good success story. That you can't beat that. And it's funny, and I know it seems like I really need to keep bringing up the gallery, but I'll just make a quick example. I offered two different types of services to artists. I had spaces in the gallery where I would approach an artist that I knew had a body of work that was cohesive that I could hang in a respectful way. And at the end of the day, I wanted to sell some art, because
Right?
I'm only getting commission. So I would approach these artists that I knew that had this cohesive body of work that I could show, and it would people would come and see it and hopefully buy it. And then there were other artists. I had a smaller portion where if somebody wanted to rent a space, now that's really frowned. If there's some artists hearing this, that's really frowned on in the art community. But there were some people that would not have gotten into a gallery any other way under any other arrangement because they didn't have a cohesive body of work. It was all different stuff, but they still would sell well. And I would say, look, you can rent this wall for X number of dollars a month. But what's funny is the difference between the behavior between the artist that was invited in and we could put across this really large wall, we might only hang five pieces. Because think about when you fall in love, you see that person kind of out in space by themselves and the whole world just melts away and there's your love. And art is the same way. You don't step out of the house for the evening with your wife expecting you're going to go buy a $5,000 painting. You don't expect to until you come through my door. I change your destiny. But and I put that beauty in your life, and it's something you can talk about for the rest of your life. So I loved being part of that. But the artists that were renting the space would jam the wall. They'd bring everything they had ever painted or sculpted or whatever, and they just smothered the wall where you couldn't tell where one piece ended and the other one began. And what people would do is they would stand and look at this mishmash, get overwhelmed because, and even Cialdini talks about this, the confused mind does not buy, and they would
Mhm.
walk right past that. So it seems very counterintuitive, but it was exactly like what you said. She needed to amp down, turn it down, increase those individual impacts. So that's that wall with five pieces of art on it. And when she got really strong in those five, that's when she grew. But initially, what she was trying to do is smother that whole
Mother of the
wall with
wall.
her art. See, I
Yep.
was going to pull that metaphor together. I promise you. Yeah,
No,
no,
it's
that's fantastic.
it, it's absolutely true. And if you're thinking about starting a nonprofit or if you're on the board of a nonprofit, a concept that you need to be familiar with is the concept of sustainable impact. And what I mean by that is if you're at a for-profit, you have a one-stage revenue model. Your revenue model is sell. It's sales. Why? Because everyone you sell to gives you money. Ideally, they give you more money than the thing that you purchased, and therefore you use that money to go get more people who then come in the door and then you sell them a thing, right? It's one stage revenue model. Sales. Millions of books have been written on it. Nonprofits, there was a research study on nonprofit professionals, and 95% of them reported burnout. Nonprofits are more likely to die because the founder flames out than any other reason. And a big reason for this is they ignore the fact that nonprofits have a two-stage revenue cycle. They go into it with for-profit thinking and think they're going to run this nonprofit like a for-profit. And they do program work all the time because what do you do for profit? You go sell and then you serve your customers. They program work all the time. But nonprofits have a two-stage revenue cycle because every person who you help as a nonprofit, or most people you help as a nonprofit, is actually a net loss on your revenue because they don't have the money to pay you for that service. If they did, you'd be running a for-profit. So you have to serve people and fundraise and serve people and fundraise. So in a nonprofit, things take twice as long. Now, a lot of nonprofits that take 5 times as long, but they only have to take twice as long because you have to have both pieces worked out. And if you're an organization that the founder is burning out, what is likely happening is the program side of the nonprofit is outpacing the fundraising side of the organization. And you need to get those two back in alignment so that you can actually make a sustainable impact instead of make a really nice impact for like 2 years and then the founder burns down. The leadership transition doesn't work because it's really hard to leadership transition in a nonprofit. And then, you have a whole bunch of people who could have helped society who just give up on helping society and they go off and they buy a farm in Montana and they never talk to anybody again.
Whether you have a business or want to start one, you need ideas. Pick up our book, Scintilla, the ultimate guide to generating business ideas, products, and services. Available on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, hardcover, and now as an audiobook. After buying the book, go to www.freetimemastermind.com, click Other, and type Book Bonus Material to get access to the book's vault of extra information, as well as access to a private Facebook group for book owners. Find the link to the book in the description. What nonprofit do you wish existed but doesn't exist? Do you have like one that, man, I wish somebody would start something like that?
I think a nonprofit that doesn't exist right now is a nonprofit that utilizes AI training and AI to help people get out of economic ruts, to help people get out of really challenging economic spaces. There's a couple growing areas in nonprofits that people should pay attention to if they're going to be starting a nonprofit. Now, I am a big fan of nonprofit competition. I know a lot of people in my sector are not. They're like, why would you start a nonprofit? We have 1.7 million. Yeah, we have 40 million businesses and we're fine. Big fan of nonprofit competition because it means more ideas can hit the table and we can learn more about what works and what doesn't and learn quickly. So there's a lot of spaces where start a nonprofit, go ahead, because our social problems are intractable and they're a real pain to get something going. So hopefully somebody figures it out, right? But there are a couple growing areas. One is mental health. There's a really growing understanding that we need to focus on not just people's physical needs, but also their mental and emotional needs. And so that's a really hot area in nonprofits. If you're looking for a cause, mental health is absolutely one of the areas. But also anything that utilizes high tech. So AI in particular, AI is going to revolutionize everything. But what happens when a product or service revolutionizes everything? It leaves a core group of people behind. And those are the people that nonprofits tend to serve best. Nonprofits are best doing like workforce training programs and stuff like that for people who are coal miners, who are left behind from, the technological advances. Government sucks at that. Their training programs are awful.
Terrible.
Demonstrably and statistically awful.
Don't pull my chain. Don't pull my chain.
But anything that's high tech right now, that you see in 3D printing, another industry that will leave people in the dust that you could be helping, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. How many people could be benefiting from, being involved in the blockchain and being part of that technology revolution? If you're looking at the cutting edge of technology and you're looking at starting a nonprofit, that is one of the areas that I would look at, is look for, society operates kind of with these three institutions. We've got the government, we've got the free market, and we've got the community. And the role of the government is, protect people, keep them safe, roughly. The role of business is we're going to solve problems for people who have money. And the role of community is to fill in the gap that neither of those two hit. And so whenever business makes a massive advance, if nonprofits don't fill that gap, people will go to the government to fill that gap. And the government sucks at filling that gap, and they fill it temporarily and yada, yada, etc. So start a nonprofit where you see massive innovation to help those people left behind. You're going to have so much money because all the innovators are going to make bank, and B, you're actually going to be really helping a bunch of people who would otherwise be left behind for 25 years and then shittily helped by the government.
Tell me more about the mental health. Have you worked with organizations that are doing that, and how are they? What's their strategy? And before you answer that, let me throw another one in there. Where are you getting most of your people coming to you? Is it because of things that you're doing? Are you doing SEO on your website? Is it your Facebook's on fire? Is your YouTube? How are people finding you? What are you finding to be effective?
It is mostly Facebook. The vast majority of nonprofits are about 10 years behind the rest of the world in tech. So you think about what's 10 years behind, well, that's Facebook.
Facebook.
Yep. So they're somewhat on LinkedIn kind of, but mostly on Facebook. So answering Facebook comments and providing a lot of value. I do a lot of videos. So whether you look at my Facebook, if you look up Dan Johnson, it's the most generic name ever to hit the existence. But you look up Next Level Nonprofits on Facebook or on YouTube. I'm constantly putting out videos. I actually like, for those entrepreneurs who are interested in social creation, I've found that a really good way to create content is listen to the problems that you're hearing on your sales calls or in your conversations with people, and then go do a video about it. So it's not just them getting your advice, it's everybody. And that's the exact same problems that everybody else has, and it will catch your content on fire, so to speak. So, so the vast majority of people that have come to me, I would say probably 50% are mental health, in the mental health space.
Wow.
I'm not
Okay.
I'm not a mental health practitioner. I don't have any particular, focus on mental health, but that's how on fire mental health organizations are right now, and how
Mhm.
deep the need is for mental health support.
Let me interject there quickly. Is that also, and I hate to put it this way, but there's no way to polish this. What is the thing that people are most willing to open up their wallets for?
It very much depends on the person. The key to nonprofit fundraising is more finding the right donor who's interested in your cause than it is finding the right button to push on a particular person.
Mm, okay.
And I think that's really important to understand, because for profits, it's kind of like 60-40 the other way. It's very much like you find the right person, yes, sort of, but you also find whatever button, whatever need they have. A lot of people have some similar needs across the board. But if you're going to be an effective nonprofit, you have to pick a lane and a problem to solve that is narrow enough that people actually understand what the heck you're solving and are willing to invest in it, which cuts out like 90% of people. So a lot of that is more about matching to whatever that particular donor's background or interest is, or whatever. And we have a tool that we use for that, which is called your transformational vision. And you figure out, where in that is it. You look for people who've experienced that problem themselves, or people who know somebody
Mm,
who's experienced that problem themselves. You look at people who benefit from your vision. So let's say that you are tackling homelessness. Well, people who might donate to that are obviously people who were homeless, or whatever everybody thinks of those.
mhm,
But also think about everybody who benefits when you eliminate homelessness in your city, right? The police department benefits because crime goes down. Local businesses benefit. The local bars benefit because you have more people coming in and socializing. Like, there's so many different people who benefit from that you can now approach. You have people who, based on your mission or how you do the thing, would be interested in helping you. So if you are, primarily solving homelessness through providing tiny homes, then tiny home manufacturers would be interested in working with you and helping you. Anything you put in the tiny homes, those
mhm.
people are going to be interested in working with you. So a lot of the first step of nonprofit fundraising is identifying who are the constituencies who might invest in you. And it's going to be very different. Like, there's this myth in nonprofits that you go for the wealthy people. Capacity does not equal giving. Tie into your vision, belief in your impact, interest in the impact you're going to make. That is a better predictor of whether people will give you a significant sum of money than capacity. And that's what you need to be looking for as a nonprofit.
And behind that is great storytelling, which not every, and that's the tough thing. Even as a podcaster, I have to be informative, I have to be entertaining, I have to be sometimes a little bit edgy, I have to be all of those things. And when you have a nonprofit, it's the same thing. If you may have a compelling backstory, but if you can't convey it, oh, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna have trouble. Whereas some organizations can just show a sad puppy on TV and play Arms of the Angels, and I can't think of the name of that organization. But those are the most. I mean, even I feel. So I was in the Army for 8 years, and even I feel sad when you show me a puppy and play that song for some reason. I've never donated any money to them, so there's questionable whether it's effective at getting my wallet or not. But
Well,
go
I
ahead.
I kind of I kind of want to push back on that a little bit.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
this it's not that I don't believe storytelling effective. In fact, storytelling is incredibly effective. Storytelling is amazing, and in getting better at telling your story is a great way to have more doors open up for you. But I want to challenge this because it's part of the core myths of nonprofit fundraising. Nonprofit fundraising, the idea is it's all KLT. It's no like and trust. That is all of how people believe nonprofit fundraising works. But if you're in business, you would find that to be a little ridiculous if that was all there was. If all business was about know, like, and trust, then all you'd have to do is get to know people and then they like you and trust you and then you sell them, right? But you actually have to have a decent product or service
Mhm.
in order to get the actual sale. You can know, like, and trust lots of people, but you're not going to buy from them because nothing they have is actually any good for you. But nonprofits have operated off of know, like, and trust as fundraising because nonprofits, going back to that mindset thing we talked about at the beginning, believe that they're just here to make people feel good. And once you drop that and you actually create a real product as a nonprofit and you sell a product as an organization, it doesn't rely as much on your fundraising, your storytelling skill. It doesn't rely as much on how friendly you are and how many rich people, like you. And now you actually have a product that you're selling with a tangible, definable impact that people are buying into. Once you do that, your fundraising changes because you adopt this business principle into your fundraising. Look, if you're listening to this right now and you're a nonprofit leader, you're on the board of a nonprofit, your fundraising probably sounds like this. Here's our amazing story. Here's why I'm involved with this organization. It's so great. Would you be interested in supporting us? It's probably what it sounds like. And I guarantee you, if you make one tweak to that approach, and instead of, will you please support us? We're an amazing organization. We're awesome, blah, 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 whatever, is you sit down with your board or with your executive director and you figure out what your donation unit is. How much money does it cost to deliver an impact? What is the impact product that we are selling? And you figure out it's $1,756 to give a veteran intense therapy to the point that it drops his scores on the PTSD test by 40%. You figure that out and you ask for that $1,746 like this. It costs $1,746 to put a veteran through intense therapy and enable them to live a life that is mostly free of PTSD. Would you be willing to sponsor one veteran through this process? You do that, you will 3 or 5 times the money that you make over
Sure.
the next several asks.
When you talk to people in that early phase of you working with them, I mean, maybe they've been maybe they're just starting, maybe they've been involved a year or 3 years. But when you're doing that discovery call where you're getting to know this person for the first time, what is something that comes out of their mouth that you think when they say X, they get it. They that you can align with them and you like, I can get behind, I can help this person because they get it. Sometimes there's just key phrases. Do you listen for things like that?
See, I was going to be able to easily answer the opposite of when they don't get it. I have a
Oh, you
whole
can answer.
laundry list
You can answer that
of
too. Yeah, go
when they
ahead.
don't get it. I think when they get it is when they realize that fundraising is key. I think if I hear them say, I understand how important fundraising is. then they are starting to understand what it takes to actually solve a social problem. Coming from the world of politics and being in some, before I went into the nonprofit space as a consultant, I was in some of the most powerful back rooms in politics that DC has to offer. The public finance working group is one of those things that is never talked about, but is chaired by sitting congressmen. And when I would be in those rooms, they'd be coming up with solutions to all of these social problems and think that they're the hottest, people on the block. And absolutely zero of them would work, and zero of the people in there had any freaking clue how to solve any of these social problems, myself included. And it's because in politics we think we can solve every social problem in 2 years, and that's just not how it works. The reason that we are plagued with these really tough challenges is because they're actually really tough to solve. There's an organization, fantastic organization out of San Diego, focuses on family homelessness. That's their thing. It takes them 5 years of intense programming to get a family permanently out of homelessness. 5 years. Now, when they do it, it works. And that family, now they have a breadwinner, and now they have the ability to, have their own home and to stay on their feet, and they track them for years afterward, and they know it works. But it takes 5 years. People underestimate the amount of work that goes into real social change. And that's why when someone understands that they have to have an organization designed for impact, to make the impact, not just go out there, not just do the work, not just help people. They actually have to create an organization around them and support and funding and get the media attention. They have to do that in order to make the impact. When they get that, when they understand that, all of a sudden they have the absolute best part of nonprofits, which is the deep passion coming from seeing this problem and seeing nobody else solving it and watching people struggle and going out there and being a helper with the practical knowledge that in order to do this, I have to create an organization that will support it. When they get that, they have the potential for incredible impact as an organization.
And what an iron will to sit there for 5 years and work and do that deep work for finally someone to turn a corner. But you've affected a whole family. That's the other thing too. It's not just one person. And interesting that it's 5 years, because I don't know how many years we call a generation, but I'll just say 10 years if I'm 10 years younger or older than someone, I would consider them to be a different generation. And it's funny that 5 years is 50% of a gen. So it takes half a generation to change that. But the payoff is amazing. Think about the kid now. The grandkids are in college, and the grandkid becomes a doctor, and it's almost like a fruit tree. It takes a lot of fruit trees, people don't realize, take 5 to 7 years to bear fruit. The average, just any species you think of, some way longer, some way shorter, but at average 5 to 7. That's a long time to wait for an orange.
And yeah, oh yeah, and an analogy that I give a lot, it I want for people who don't quite understand the value of their organization. So let's say that you're listening to this podcast and you're a business owner, you're sitting on the board of a nonprofit, and the executive director, very passionate person, loves to help, doesn't quite get it yet, right? So one of the ways you can help them get it is you sit down with them and you come up with the monetary value of what they do, the true monetary value of what they do. So, and as an example, let's say we'll use an easy example. Let's say you run a youth entrepreneurship organization. That's what you do. You help disadvantaged kids from these tough families start their own businesses. And let's say that you help 100 kids. It's a smallish, medium kind of program. Help 100 kids. And you suck at it, and your failure rate is 80%. So only 20% of these kids, only 20 kids, actually even try to start a business. And out of these 20 kids, only 2 of them actually create a business that has more than 10 employees. But 2 of them created a business that has more than 10 employees. And businesses that have more than 10 employees, 10 full-time employees, we're talking 2, 3, 4, $5 million companies. You created $10 million of impact, not even considering all of the extraneous impacts and the breaking generational cycles and other kids are going to start companies. And you created $10 million of impact, and you're walking into the office of a donor and afraid to ask for $100.
Yeah, you sold me. You sold me. Oh, wow. That's incredible. The doors that you're able to open, Dan. And so that's the perfect pivot. How can I know that there are people that are going to want to reach out to you? What's the best way? Do you like them to contact you on Facebook? Do you want them to go to your website? What's the best way?
What I would say is either go to my YouTube or go to my website, Next Level Nonprofits or nextlevelnonprofits.us, and look at some of the stuff that I put out. See if it solves any of your problems. See if it makes sense. Listen to this podcast. See if I make sense. And if I make sense to you, and instead of having a charity, you want to design your organization for impact, talk to me,
That
and
makes a lot of sense.
I will help you both launch an organization that is impact driven, impact focused, and help you raise up to your first 250K. From then, got a lot of friends who can help, but that's where I focus.
Do you have a book in the works, Dan?
I am ADHD, so getting me to sit down and write a book is a little bit of a challenge. But consider my library of video content, my
Okay.
book. I have, maybe I can throw out. I have, as I'm doing this podcast, I have been thinking that a book title that I might run with if I can get someone to sit me down and do it is how to start a nonprofit that's not fucked up. If you're listening to this podcast and you run an organization and you're like, what we do is slow. Why is my organization running slowly? Like everybody who's been in nonprofits knows that boards are like bureaucracies and they're like committees with nothing to do. And it is just a slog. And everybody seems like they're going slowly. It's because nonprofit visions and their definition of impact is so vague that they can get away with a lot. We talk all the time about creating SMART goals and stuff like that for an organization. If you're at a for-profit company and you're on the leadership team of that for-profit company, you have your P&Ls in front of you at least every quarter, if not every month. And you're constantly looking at them. How are we doing? Where's our revenue numbers? Where's our revenue targets? You're constantly looking at that. You're a nonprofit, you have this flowery vision statement. It's like, we, hereby hope that someday in the future these amazing things will happen, right? Put a metric on it. Put a 3-year target on your vision statement. Make that real, and it will change the culture at your organization to one of accountability. If you keep coming back to that every week, every month, being like, where are we at? Have we yet helped 480 veterans reclaim their lives from PTSD? Are we there yet? That's our goal for 2028. How close are we to that? It will actually create a guiding light and an accountability to the impact you create as an organization. So we left that part out, but just that other little thing that you can do is just literally just quantify your metric of
Have it
what your
written
impact
down.
is.
The power of list building and writing things down, and it's such a simple thing, and so few people do it. I mean, even at big organizations, things aren't quantified. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dan. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Until next time, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
The Free Time Mastermind group now offers special videos available only to Mastermind Insiders. Go to www.freetimemastermind.com, click Other, and type YouTube Insider to get free access. Also, click like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video. Thank you for watching the Free Time Mastermind podcast.